Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real treat to be here. It's extra specially scary because it's Bring Your Parents to Work Day today. My parents are in the audience, so for the first time ever, they'll get a sense of what the hell I do all day. So fingers crossed I don't disappoint Mummy and Daddy. Anyway, there are two things I want to do this afternoon in my paper. Firstly, I want to look in closer detail at one of the paintings that you'll have seen in the first room of the exhibition here in Milton Keynes, Lord Torrington's Hunt Servant setting out from... Now, I asked the experts in the room, is it Southall, Suttle, South Hill? Any? Southall, thank you. And I realise with that I have totally undermined any credibility I have for the rest of the paper. So, Suttle, am I correct? Southall, thank you everyone, Southall. So we are setting out from Southall, off we go, to think about where this work fits within Stubbs's career and to use this painting to shed further light on the patronage networks that sustained the artist throughout the 1760s. So in some ways I'm continuing on from the story that we've just had from Anthony, those lost years. We're now much more into the well-known period of Stubbs' career. The second thing I want to do in my paper is to argue that Lord Torrington's Hunt Servant setting out from Suttle is a significant painting for exploring the ways in which George Stubbs in Southall, there we go, got it wrong, is a significant painting for thinking about the ways in which George Stubbs in the 20th century, there we go, sorry about that everyone, in the 20th century becomes much more than a mere painter of horses. This work, purchased by John Crichton Stuart, the 4th Marquis of Bute in 1929, provides a really valuable insight into Bute's ambitious and focused collecting strategies, which distinguished him as a patron and collector of significant repute at a time more usually associated with aristocratic retrenchment. So, for just over a decade, the starting point for any sustained work on George Stubbs has been Judy Edgerton's catalogue raisonné. Now, the cover image may look familiar. Why, might we ask, isn't Whistlejacket on the front cover, or one of Stubbs's mares and foals sequences, or indeed the monumental Hambletonian that Marcus showed us earlier today? Why this seemingly more domestic piece of art? And I'm sure there are colleagues in the room today who were involved in the very production of this catalogue that can shed light on these editorial decisions. And I'm sure Edgerton's archive at the Paul Mellon Centre would also help. But I do think there are clues in both the text of the catalogue raisonné and in the 1984 Tate and Yale Centre for British Art exhibition catalogues, and indeed in the title of the exhibition that we're here to celebrate today. Torrington's Hunt Servants is simply done from nature. This is Stubbs, to use Edgerton's words, first and foremost as a painter of reality. This is just to prove that I actually did some research for this. This is a sort of, this is what millennials call virtue signalling. So this picture holds up a mirror to the reality of the ownership, management, and use of horses in the mid-18th century. And it does so through new levels of anatomical and architectural precision. As Stubbs would later describe it to Ozias Humphrey, a man who we've heard quoted a number of times already today, the painting depicted, I quote, his coachmen, grooms, and hunters, with a few dogs going out a-hunting with a whipper in, the village of Southall forming the background of the picture. Now, a whipper in, for those of you not completely au fait with the language of fox hunting, is the name given to the huntsman whose role it is to keep the foxhounds focused on the job in hand and round up any stray hounds during and after the hunt. There'll be one of those after the drinks reception as well to make sure that people get home. So here's the whipper in there. So cool. Well, you know, the great thing about that, say what you see, there's the massive whip. to keep the hounds in place. Now, I think what Stubbs does with here is to capture a moment of calm professionalism ahead of the day's sport. The three hunters have been groomed, tacked, and saddled out of shot to the left of the picture. Two are already ridden by Torrington's stable staff, while his coachman hands the stable boy the reins of the third. Horses, men, and a calm spaniel form a frieze across the centre of the picture. The eager foxhound in the bottom right encourages the riders to move off the stage to the right, whilst the whipper-in fixes his gaze on us, the viewer, perhaps encouraging us to join them out in the fields. Now, I think if you removed the background of Southall Village, we're in the territory of mares and foals. Southall, sorry. I heard someone visually exclaim in the audience with frustration. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. What you have is a flat visual plane, something that Martin spoke about in the Q&A at the end of the first session. But I think it's in the specificity of place, indeed the spirit of the place, that is Stubbs' most significant achievement in this work. The men, horses, and dogs are precisely anchored in time and space. Now, the closest contemporary engraving we have is Thomas Bladeslade's South Prospect of South Hill in the county of Bedford, which appeared as part of the fourth volume of Vitruvius Britannicus in 1739. Vitruvius Britannicus, for those of you sort of unfamiliar with 18th century architectural treatises, it's a kind of house and garden of the 18th century, where the bones of Stubbs's setting are clearly visible. Up here in the top right-hand corner, here you have the Church of All Saints. There, the road in which the horses have been mounted. My suggestion is that this is the stable complex up here, where the horses have been prepared and they're coming out past the church here. So Stubbs's viewpoint was immediately to the northwest of the West Tower of All Saints Church, where the horses are being brought, as I said, from the stable complex to the north of the church, through the village to the south front of the main house. Here, where we can only presume Lord Torrington would have then taken charge of the lead horse on the left of the painting. So again, we have a painting that really it's something that illustrates and anchors a story in a particular locale. And as Anthony hinted at earlier in his introduction, this is all only 25 miles from where we're sitting now. So I thought, in preparation for this paper today, I should go and have a look at All Saints, Southall myself, or South Hill. And here we are, taken this morning at 8 a.m., where the estate office is now owned by the Whitbread family. The estate office had me turning up looking reasonably well-dressed, I like to think, making an incredibly bizarre request, holding on my iPhone a picture of the Stubbs picture, demanding to be let down the private drive to have a look at exactly where he painted, well, exactly where it's set. And I think it's really striking. So here we are, we have the west front there, and not a huge amount has changed in terms of the location of the church. The two new cedars of Lebanon at the back, my assumption, they're a product of the Capability Brown landscaping that comes after Stubbs's picture. So this pictorial precision, I'd like to suggest, is rooted in the passions and social networks of Stubbs's patron, George Byng, the fourth Viscount Torrington. Born in 1740, Torrington was in his mid-20s when he commissioned Stubbs. He was educated at Westminster School, where he was the near contemporary and friend of William Henry Cavendish Bentinck, the third Duke of Portland. And I think it's this connection that's key to understanding Torrington's commission. I think we should see Stubbs's work for Torrington as a pendant to his painting of the third Duke of Portland riding out past the riding school at Welbeck Abbey, which was exhibited at the Society of Artists in 1767. And I think the similarities are instructive, both as statements of ancestry and privilege, except the Duke of Portland has rather more to play with. In the Portland picture on your right, Stubbs has shown the Duke riding out from the parallel Jacobean riding school and stables designed for the man who remained the most famous English horseman, the Duke's 17th century ancestor William Cavendish, 1st Duke of Newcastle. And Newcastle's manual for training horses remained essential bedtime reading for every 18th century horseman, having been republished in 1743 as a general system of horsemanship. Now, Torrington couldn't make such a statement, as Southall Park was described as new built in 1732, most likely to designs by Isaac Ware for Torrington's grandfather, George, the first Lord of the Admiralty. So to compete with his friend, the Duke of Portland, I suggest, he turned to the vernacular architecture of church and village as a means of emphasising his family's connection to place and lineage. But where Torrington could compete was the quality of his horses. The chestnut hunter in the centre of the picture, for example, twists its neck, highlighting its toned musculature, while the hunter on the left, probably Torrington's favourite, is a study in good breeding. And as an aside, it's worth remembering that this is a tradition that very much continues. I was lucky enough to go on the Attingham study programme about the horse and the country house, where we were taken to the stallion unit, which is a place I commend to you, ladies and gentlemen. But the reason I've included this is on the walls we have these lovely sort of, photographic portraits of fine bloodstock to lure you in as a potential breeder. So I think the tradition continues, and it's this kind of tradition that we should see Torrington's hunters sort of situated within. So Lord Torrington would be one of the Duke of Portland's closest and most infuriating friends, with over 400 surviving letters documenting their relationship. So I'm not going to read you all 400, but just to give you a bit of a sense of the personal context within which this commission sits. In March 1764, Torrington wrote of his gratitude for the Duke's friendship and the pleasure of a friend who, I quote, "to whom one can open freely the feelings of one's heart and whose advice one can depend on when given." The friendship was, however, to be tried and tested by Torrington's phenomenal capacity for spending money. In December 1764, he confided to Portland that his key requirements in a wife was a marriage portion of £30,000 sterling, as, I quote, "my debts would swallow near half." The following year, having succeeded in finding a wife, Lucy Boyle, the only daughter of the 5th Earl of Cork, Torrington let his friend know that he has yielded to his brother and his new wife's, I quote, "temptation," and has bought a pack of foxhounds. So I think this is where we start to see the interest that is then manifest through the commission of Stubbs. On the birth of Torrington's first son in May 1769, Portland offered to stand as godfather to the boy William Henry Master. The Portlands and the Torringtons spent Christmas together in 1769, with the latter bringing a set of horses with him to Welbeck. And Torrington was clearly impressed by his friend on a number of fronts, and in 1772 sent the Duke a plan for a house according to the idea of the Duke of Portland, and planned to engage Capability Brown to remodel the landscape if, I quote, "I am not a bankrupt first." So Stubbs, I feel, captures a vision of ordered serenity that was, unfortunately, a complete facade. By February 1773, Torrington was writing to Portland to ask him to act as security on a loan of 6,000 sterling, confessing to his friend that, I quote, "my affairs are in such a state that I really know not how and where to begin. Another one of Stubbs's patrons, the Marquis of Rockingham, wrote to Portland in September 1773 to inform him that his attempts to secure a sinecure for Torrington had been unsuccessful. For the next 4 years, the Torringtons rolled from one financial crisis to the next. You could say they were having a torrid time, with George writing to Portland in January 1777 that, I quote, "The harpies, as they are all open-mouthed and determined to wait no longer." By May of that year, the game was reaching its climax. Torrington wrote to Portland explaining that he had taken an inventory of all the rooms and contents of Southwell. This was a man who loved his pictures, writing, I quote, "Now I have begun, I will go through, although I die in the next minute from what I have felt," as he went through his inventory. So by the summer of 1777, Torrington was, after initially resisting Portland's advice to leave and head overseas, finally willing to let his home to Lord Algernon Percy. The Duke of Portland, through his steward at Burlington House, Adam Price, arranged the sale of Torrington's horses during the August of 1777. In November 1777, John Tate, acting for Christie's, informed the Duke that he had paid Lord Torrington £500 on account of the pictures to come from Southwell. By December 1777, the Torringtons were in Arnhem, Portland having made use of his family connections in the Low Countries. It got even worse, I'm sorry to say. In January 1778, Portland's steward at Southwell reported that, I quote, "the famous horse Nottingham has been killed for the dogs on Lord Torrington's orders." Desperation had clearly set in. He wrote from Arnhem that he was prepared to sell the timber from all full-grown and non-ornamental trees at Southwell, but objected to the sale of the furniture, as the house could not be let without it. And then finally, on the 7th of February, Torrington writes again to his old school friend, this time complaining bitterly of the low sum that Tate of Christie's has sold his pictures for. So, this sale had happened 2 weeks earlier. On the second day of the sale, the 24th of January 1778, lot 51, there we are, by Mr. Stubbs, 3 horses and grooms with dogs belonging to Lord Torrington was sold to one of Stubbs's most ardent and loyal patrons, the Smithfield meat dealer William Wildman, who features prominently in the exhibition downstairs, for 15 guineas. Next, 9 years later, the painting would be back on the block at Christie's, where it was sold from the posthumous sale of Wildman's collection for £22, 10 shillings and 6pence to a Mr. Middleton. For the next 142 years, the painting remained in the Middleton family before returning to Christie's for a third and final time in the summer of 1929. Now, 1929 was quite an auspicious year for Stubbs. In Brussels, Stubbs's portrait of Torrington's friend and financial crutch, the 3rd Duke of Portland, was one of the stars of the retrospective exhibition of British art at the Musée Moderne. Frank Rutter, in his review for The Spectator, wrote of the delightful triple fusion of people, landscapes and animals that, I quote, were seen in more than one of Stubbs's masterpieces at the Sassoon, so that's Philip Sassoon's exhibition of English conversation pieces, and are conspicuously evident in the superb painting of the 3rd Duke of Portland, which was so much admired when lent to the British Art Exhibition at Brussels. Here, indeed, with a prodigal generosity, the artist has added a 4th architectural element to his composition. House, trees, dogs, horses and humans are all painted with such perfection of craftsmanship and harmonised into a whole of such compelling beauty and dignity that forthwith we realise the absurdity of limiting the scope of so widely ranging a painter of genius by attempting to label him as a sporting artist. Now, what I'd hope you'd agree with me is that we can extend a similar sentiment to Torrington's picture. So this is where our picture takes centre stage once more. On the 19th of July 1929, Christie's sold the painting for £4,410, a new world record price for a work by George Stubbs, and approximately 200 times its previous sale price. The painting was one of 4 lots purchased from the Christie's sale by the London office of the New York dealer Knoedler and Co. It's lurking, where is it? It's lurking down there. Oh no, sorry, the one up. There's one up there. Where it would spend a month on the stock books before being sold for £5,500 in August to Colnaghi. The painting was bought from Colnaghi by John Crichton Stuart, the 4th Marquis of Bute, and is listed in the picture accounts 1910 to 1944 in the archives of the Bute family at Mount Stuart. There, where are we? There, it's around here somewhere, isn't it? There we are, Huntsman setting out. There we go. The entry in the Bute picture account states, bought at the sale by Knoedler and purchased from them, suggesting that Colnaghi may have brought the painting from Knoedler on behalf of Bute's agent, the dealer Francis Harvey. Returning to the London stock books of Knoedler in the summer of 1929, the large amount of sporting art available in the sale rooms is striking, and how the majority of the paintings were bought by American collectors and institutions. So in this context, the 4th Marquis of Bute stands out as an English aristocratic collector, buying at a time more commonly associated with country house fire sales. So what's become apparent through exploring the collection of notes, memoranda and draft inventories in the painting files in the archives at Mount Stuart is that the Stubbs painting kick-started an ambitious collecting campaign that enabled the 4th Marquis to create a significant collection of sporting art that invites comparison to that of Paul Mellon, who would purchase his first Stubbs, Pumpkin with a Young Stable Lad, in 1936. 1929, it seems, was the year that the 4th Marquis really hit his stride purchasing, as he bought through Francis Harvey works by J.E. Fernley, Ben Marshall and John Wootton, in addition to Torrington's Hunt Servants. And Harvey completed a valuation of Bute's picture collection in 1930. Of the 625 paintings listed, 11 were categorised as sporting art, with 6, including the Stubbs, hanging at Cardiff Castle, one of the Bute family's houses in Wales. The Marquis's most recent purchase, Wootton's Leeds, hung in his London office at 26 Queen Anne's Gate, whilst other recent purchases, Marshall's Grimalkin, Dean Wolstenholme's The Finish, and Thomas Spencer's Victorious, were displayed in his London home at 39 Belgrave Square. By the end of the 1930s, with war on the horizon, the remaining sporting pictures were redistributed around the family's houses. Oh, that's nice. In 1938, 85 sporting pictures, along with, I quote, gas masks, etc., from the basement, were sent from 39 Belgrave Square to Cardiff Castle. A total of 99 sporting pictures are included in a complete list compiled from around about late 1938 to 1940, with 80 of those hung appropriately in the stables. Those not hung in the stables included Henry and Samuel Alkin's hunting and coursing scenes in Lady Bute's room, Fernley's Lord Whitworth, and the Stubbs in the drawing room at Cardiff Castle. So I think Bute saw and understood his sporting collection as a discrete part of the wider family holdings, but one which had the potential to be a capsule collection that was representative of the most preeminent examples of British sporting art from the late 16th to the late 19th century. An intriguing document in the picture files suggests the extent to which this was a carefully calibrated collection. On a single page, sporting artists are split into 32 existing and 24 to get. And I think what's exciting based on the first half of the conference this morning There are some familiar names that we heard in the earlier papers appearing here on the 4th Marquess of Bute's shopping list. It's quite different to mine when I go to IKEA, that's for sure. God, tough crowd. No laughs at all today. Really tough crowd. Anyway, bringing this all to a close. So the two main things I've hoped I've been able to show you today is to place Lord Torrington's commission within the precise context of his friendship with Stubbs's other major patron, the 3rd Duke of Portland. And on the other hand, reflect on the importance of this particular work in the 20th century resuscitation of Stubbs as one of our great artists. Now, the Stubbs remains the jewel in the crown of the Bute collection of sporting pictures, especially after the dispersal of 53 lots through Christie's in 1999. The Marquess of Dufferin and Avon, the curator of the Arts Council's touring exhibition, British Sporting Painting, 1650 to 1850, in 1974, was able to borrow 32 works from Mount Stuart, including, despite the initial reluctance from the 6th Marquess of Bute, the 4th Marquess's grandson, the Stubbs. So this was a coup for Dufferin, who wrote to Bute to say how he was so happy when I got your letter that I actually forgot the miners' strike for nearly 20 minutes. Norbert Linton, the director of exhibitions for the Arts Council, expressed his satisfaction in a more bureaucratic tone. The paintings that Sheridan Dufferin has recommended to us out of your collection would make a most valuable contribution. We have little doubt that this exhibition will prove of interest to a large public as well as specialists. So, as this fantastic show here in Milton Keynes surely demonstrates, Stubbs has lost none of his popularity. Thank you very much.